story is told about a storyteller, a maggid, a man who would go from town to town telling stories, sharing insights with those stories. And now, to appreciate this story about this maggid, you need to know a little bit about the economics of being a maggid. You see, maggidim would go from town to town, and when they told a good story, house owner, a balabas would say, "Yo, come spend the night by me." Maybe someone would give them a meal, maybe a cuppa here, a cuppa there, and they make it by. But every good storyteller knows that at a certain point, everyone's heard your stories. You need to go out and get some new material. So this specific maggid was traveling through Poland, traveling through the Ukraine, and he met the famous Baal Shem Tov. He spent the day in the town of the Baal Shem Tov. And as he was about to leave that town, the Baal Shem Tov said to him, "Mr. Maggid, storyteller, I'd like you to spend 6 months with me. Perhaps you'll hear some good stories, you'll learn something, you'll have something to tell on your various travels during your life. Maybe even you'll be able to help someone with your stories." An opportunity like this, 6 months with the famous Baal Shem Tov, whose famous legend was already spreading throughout all the Jewish world. Such an opportunity cannot be missed. So our storyteller spends those 6 months by the Baal Shem Tov. He sees amazing things. But sure enough, those 6 months ends, and it's time for this storyteller to move on. And he goes from town to town, from place to place. Months pass. He reaches a town, goes to the inn, and no one's interested in his stories. Tells a bunch. But lo and behold, he's left in a corner in the inn. Until the innkeeper goes over to this gentleman, goes over to our maggid, and says, "Mr. Maggid, you should know, in this town, there's a Polish nobleman who loves stories. And in fact, for every story that he has never heard, he repays the storyteller very nicely." So our storyteller trudges through the town, following the directions of the innkeeper. And he sees a palace lit up in the distance, filled with light. And he goes past the gate, and he sees the soldiers that are there. And he asks them, "What are you doing here?" "What are you doing here?" He says, "Well, I'm a storyteller. I hear that the nobleman likes to hear stories." And they say, "Come on in." He goes in through the grounds, reaches the grand doors. He travels through the palace, past the beautiful paintings and ornaments in this huge palace. And finally he gets to the dining room, where the nobleman is seated at the end of the table, rows of coins in front of him. Our storyteller sits down and starts telling a story. And the nobleman's eyes are averted, listening, not really sitting, paying attention. And every now and then, he takes a coin and he throws it down the table. Clearly a story he has never heard before. The maggid goes through story by story by story until he has run out of stories. He's about to get up and leave when the nobleman for the first time looks up, looks into his eyes and says, "Is that your last story? Do you have nothing else?" And our maggid says, "Well, yes, you know what, I have one last story. And this is a story that I heard and that I saw told by the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov tells about a very rich man who came to see him. And this rich man came to see the Baal Shem Tov and said, I was born a Jew, but the temptations of this world overwhelmed me. I saw the beauty of this great rabbi. Tell me, what am I to do? My heart bangs within me. I feel like it was wrong. What do I do? The Baal Shem Tov said to him, go home. Go back to your home. And care for the poor. And help those in need. And the rich man said to the Baal Shem Tov, how will I know that I am forgiven? How will I know that I have done right? And the Baal Shem Tov looked at him and said, when you hear your story, you will know that you are free. And as our Maggid finished his tale, the nobleman got up and with a huge smile on his face walked across the room and gave our Maggid a hug and said, sir, you have freed me.
The next song